The bell above Pete's Gun Emporium made a sharp ringing sound as Frank Morrison pushed the glass door open. His old boots made soft sounds on the concrete floor as he walked inside. The 72-year-old man moved slowly, using his wooden cane to help him walk. His back hurt from old wounds that never healed right, but he stood as straight as he could. The gun shop was busy that Tuesday afternoon. Men in expensive hunting clothes looked at rifles behind glass cases. A few younger guys in tactical gear examined scopes and night vision equipment. The smell of gun oil and leather filled the air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh white light on everything. Frank wore his old blue jeans and a plain gray shirt. His boots were worn but clean. His gray beard was trimmed short, and his hair was combed back. He looked like any other old man you might see at the grocery store or sitting on a park bench. Nobody would guess that he had spent most of his adult life in some of the most dangerous places on earth. He walked up to the counter, where a young man in his 20s sat on a stool. The clerk had blonde hair and wore a black shirt with the store's logo. A name tag said Danny Richards. Danny was looking at his phone, scrolling through social media posts. He did not look up when Frank approached. Frank waited for a moment, then cleared his throat quietly. "Excuse me, son." Danny glanced up for just a second, then looked back at his phone. "Yeah, what do you need?" "I'm looking for some specialty ammunition for my service rifle. It's an older model, so I need specific rounds." Danny finally looked up and studied Frank from head to toe. He saw the old clothes, the cane, the gray hair. His expression showed what he was thinking. This old man did not belong in a serious gun store. "Look, Pops," Danny said, his voice full of attitude. "This isn't a pawn shop. We sell professional equipment to people who know what they're doing. Maybe you should try the sporting goods store at the mall. They have hunting stuff for beginners." Frank's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "I know what I need, son. I carried this rifle for many years in the service." Danny rolled his eyes and looked at two other customers who were watching. "Oh, let me guess. You were in the Army, right? And I bet you were Special Forces too." He laughed and shook his head. "Every old guy who comes in here has the same story. You probably fixed trucks or worked in the kitchen." The other customers started paying attention to what was happening. Some pulled out their phones, sensing drama. Frank stood quietly, his hands resting on his cane. His blue eyes stayed fixed on Danny's face. "I served 3 tours in Vietnam and 2 in the Gulf War," Frank said. His voice was steady and quiet. "I think I know something about firearms." "Sure you did, Grandpa." Danny's voice got louder. "And I'm sure you won all kinds of medals too, right? You old guys always say the same thing." A man in an expensive suit near the rifle display laughed. "These old-timers always have war stories. My grandfather claimed he was at D-Day, but he probably just swept floors." Frank turned slightly and looked at the man. For just a moment, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. The man stopped laughing and looked away. Rick Palmer, the store owner, came out from the back office. He was a big man in his 40s with a thick mustache. He had heard the conversation and saw the small crowd that was forming. Palmer looked at Frank and saw what Danny saw, an old man in cheap clothes who was causing a scene. "Is there a problem here?" Palmer asked, crossing his arms. Danny pointed at Frank. "This old guy is claiming he was some kind of war hero. He wants me to believe he needs special ammo for his service rifle." He made air quotes when he said service rifle. Palmer studied Frank for a few seconds. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting my business and bothering my customers." Frank looked around the shop. Every eye was on him. Some people were recording with their phones. He could hear whispered comments about crazy old veterans and stolen valor. His hands gripped his cane a little tighter. "I just wanted to buy some ammunition," Frank said quietly. "Well, you can buy it somewhere else," Palmer said loudly. "Danny, call security if he doesn't leave." Frank stood there for a long moment. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes held something that made a few people step back. He had faced down terrorists, drug lords, and enemy soldiers. He had been shot, stabbed, and blown up. He had saved more lives than these people would ever know. But right now, he was just an old man being kicked out of a gun store. Slowly, Frank turned toward the door. His boots made the same soft sounds on the concrete as he walked away. The shop fell quiet except for the buzz of the lights overhead. When he reached the door, Frank stopped and turned back slightly. He did not look angry or upset. His voice was calm and matter-of-fact. SEAL Team 6, Charlie Platoon, 27 years of service to this country. He paused and looked directly at Palmer. You boys have a good day now. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The bell rang once and fell silent. For a moment, nobody in the shop said anything. Then Danny laughed nervously. SEAL Team 6? Yeah, right. That old guy probably watched too many movies. But some of the older customers did not laugh. They recognized something in Frank's voice, in the way he carried himself despite his age. A few quietly left the store without buying anything. Outside in the parking lot, Frank sat in his old pickup truck. The engine was running, but he did not drive away. He stared at the steering wheel, feeling tired in a way that had nothing to do with his age. He had fought for his country for almost 3 decades. He had been decorated by presidents and generals. But today, he was just another old man who did not matter. Frank pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He found a number he had not called in months. His finger hovered over the screen for a moment before he pressed call. Frank Morrison sat in his pickup truck outside Pete's Gun Emporium. The engine hummed quietly while he stared at his phone. His weathered finger touched the screen, scrolling through names he had not called in months. Most of these numbers belonged to men who would drop everything if he asked. But Frank was not the type to ask for help. He found the name he was looking for: Jake Sullivan. The young man was like a nephew to him, though they shared no blood. Frank had trained Jake 15 years ago when the kid was fresh out of boot camp. Jake's father had died in Somalia, and Frank had been the one to pull the burning helicopter wreckage off the boy's body. Frank had been the one to call Jake's mother with the bad news. Frank pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Uncle Frank! Jake's voice came through the speaker with real warmth. This is a surprise. How are you doing, old man? Frank smiled despite his mood. Jake was 35 now, a Navy commander, stationed at Coronado. He led one of the most elite SEAL teams in the world. But to Frank, he would always be the scared 20-year-old who cried in Frank's office after learning about his father. Been better, son, Frank said. His voice carried a weight that Jake picked up immediately. What happened? Jake's tone changed. He knew Frank well enough to recognize when something was wrong. Frank told him about the gun shop. He kept his voice steady and matter-of-fact, the way he always did when reporting a mission. But Jake could hear the hurt underneath the words. This was not just about being kicked out of a store. This was about being treated like his service meant nothing. Which shop, Uncle Frank? Jake asked. His voice was getting quieter, which people who knew him understood was a dangerous sign. Pete's Gun Emporium on Harbor Boulevard. But Jake, I'm not calling for you to make trouble. I just needed to tell someone who would understand. I understand. Perfectly, Jake replied. His voice now had the calm, cold tone that his teammates knew meant someone was about to have a very bad day. What time did this happen? About an hour ago, Jake. Really, I don't want you to... Uncle Frank, Jake interrupted gently. You trained half the SEAL leadership currently serving. You saved my life and the lives of dozens of other operators. You've never asked for anything. Not once. You deserve better than this. Frank was quiet for a moment. It's not about what I deserve, son. It's about what's right. Exactly, Jake said. And what happened to you today was not right. After they hung up, Jake sat in his office at Naval Base Coronado. Through his window, he could see the Pacific Ocean stretching toward the horizon. On his desk were photos of his team, his family, and one older picture of Frank Morrison in full combat gear, taken in Afghanistan 10 years ago. Jake picked up his secure phone and dialed a number. It was answered on the first ring. Chief Cole, here. Marcus, it's Jake. We have a situation that needs immediate attention. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Cole had been Jake's right-hand man for 5 years. He was a mountain of a man, 6 feet 4 inches tall and built like a tank. He had served with Frank Morrison on 3 different deployments and owed his life to the old SEAL. "What kind of situation?" Marcus asked. Jake explained what had happened to Frank. As he talked, he could hear Marcus getting angry. The chief's breathing got heavier, and Jake could picture him clenching his fists. They kicked out. "Master Chief Morrison?" Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "They treated him like garbage?" "That's right." "Where?" Jake gave him the address. "Marcus, I want the team ready to move in 1 hour. Full dress blues, full decorations, we're going to pay these people a visit." Marcus was already moving. Jake could hear him walking through the base, his boots making sharp sounds on the concrete. "Roger that, Commander. What's the mission objective?" "Education," Jake said simply. "These civilians need to learn about respect." Marcus called the first number on his list. Petty Officer Sam Torres answered while doing push-ups in the base gym. "Sam, drop what you're doing. We're suiting up for a special operation. Dress blues, full decorations, be in the briefing room in 30 minutes. What's the target?" Sam asked, already heading for the door. "Some punk kids who disrespected Master Chief Morrison." Sam stopped walking. "They did what?" "You heard me. Pass the word to the others. Ryan, Pete, Danny, all of them. This is all hands." Sam was already dialing the next number. "On it, Chief." The word spread through the SEAL community like wildfire. Within minutes, phones were ringing across Coronado. These were not just any soldiers. These were the men who conducted the most dangerous missions in the world. They had fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and places that did not officially exist on any map. More importantly, they all knew Frank Morrison. He was a legend in their community. He had been there at the beginning of SEAL Team 6. He had trained 3 generations of operators. His service record was classified at levels most people did not know existed. Lieutenant Ryan Carter was the youngest member of the team at 26. He had only worked with Frank once, but it was enough. Frank had taught him how to survive in hostile territory when everyone else had given up on him. Ryan dropped his dinner and ran to his quarters to get his dress uniform. Petty Officer Danny Walsh had served with Frank in Afghanistan. Frank had carried Danny 3 miles through enemy territory after Danny took shrapnel in both legs. Danny called his wife to tell her he would be late coming home. Petty Officer Pete Jackson owed his life to Frank twice over. Once in Iraq when Frank pulled him out of a burning building, and once in Syria when Frank talked him out of quitting the SEALs after a mission went wrong. Pete was already pressing his dress blues when his phone rang. One by one, 12 of the most elite warriors in the American military dropped everything they were doing. They had fought terrorists, drug cartels, and hostile governments. They had conducted operations that would never be acknowledged publicly. But today, they had a different kind of mission. They were going to remind some civilians about respect. Marcus Cole stood in the briefing room 30 minutes later, looking at his assembled team. 12 SEALs in various stages of getting ready, their dress blue uniforms being prepared with military precision. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had led warriors through hell itself. "Today we have a special mission. Master Chief Frank Morrison was disrespected by some punks who think they know what real service looks like." The room fell silent. Every man there knew what Frank Morrison meant to their community. "We're going to pay them a visit," Marcus continued. "We're going to show them what real respect looks like. Questions?" There were no questions. These men understood the mission perfectly. The briefing room at Naval Base Coronado buzzed with controlled energy. 12 Navy SEALs stood at attention in their dress blue uniforms. Each man looked like he had stepped out of a recruiting poster. Their uniforms were pressed to perfection. Every button polished, every ribbon and medal placed exactly where it should be. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Cole stood in front of them, his massive frame commanding the room. His uniform carried decorations that told the story of America's wars over the past 15 years. Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation. The ribbons covered the left side of his chest in neat, colorful rows. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the authority earned through blood and brotherhood. "Master Chief Frank Morrison is not just any veteran. He is our veteran. He trained most of us. He saved the lives of half the men in this room. SEALs listened in complete silence. These were men who had faced down the worst humanity had to offer. They had kicked down doors in Fallujah, hunted terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan, and conducted operations so classified that they would never speak of them. But right now, they looked like schoolboys listening to their teacher. Commander, Jake Sullivan stepped forward. His uniform bore the Navy Cross, the second highest decoration for valor. He had earned it in Syria, leading a rescue mission that saved 37 American contractors. Frank Morrison had been the one to recommend Jake for the medal. Master Chief Morrison served with SEAL Team 6 for over 2 decades, Jake said. He was there when the unit was formed. He trained the men who trained us. His service record is classified so high that most generals don't have clearance to read it. Lieutenant Ryan Carter, the youngest man in the room, raised his hand. Commander, what's the plan? Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We're going to visit Pete's Gun Emporium. Full formation. Full honors. We're going to educate some people about what real service looks like. Petty Officer Sam Torres checked his watch. ETA to target? 30 minutes, Marcus replied. But first we need to make some calls. Sam pulled out his phone and dialed the local police department. The desk sergeant answered on the 3rd ring. Harbor City Police. Sergeant Williams speaking. Sergeant, this is Petty Officer Torres, U.S. Navy. I need to speak with your watch commander about a planned demonstration. What kind of demonstration? 12 active duty Navy SEALs will be visiting a local business in dress uniform. This is a peaceful visit, but I wanted to give you advance notice. There was a pause. Navy SEALs, what business? Pete's Gun Emporium on Harbor Boulevard. We expect to arrive at 1600 hours. Sam could hear the sergeant typing. Can you tell me the nature of this visit? Educational, Sam replied simply. The sergeant put him on hold. When he came back, his voice was different, more formal. Sir, Captain Hayes wants to speak with you. Captain Linda Hayes had been with Harbor City Police for 22 years. Her husband was a Marine veteran who had served in Iraq. When she heard that a team of SEALs was planning to visit a gun shop, she knew there had to be a story behind it. Officer Torres? This is Captain Hayes. Can you give me more details about this visit? Sam chose his words carefully. Ma'am, one of our retired Master Chiefs was treated disrespectfully at that establishment. We're going to pay our respects and ensure there are no misunderstandings about his service record. Captain Hayes understood immediately. She had seen enough veterans mistreated to know how it felt. Will this be a peaceful demonstration? Absolutely, ma'am. We're active duty military. We'll conduct ourselves according to regulations and the law. Understood. We'll make sure the area is secure. Thank you for the heads up. Meanwhile, Marcus was making his own calls. He dialed the number for the base public affairs office. Lieutenant, Commander Davis speaking. Sir, this is Chief Cole. I need to inform you about an off-base activity involving my team. Lieutenant Commander Davis listened as Marcus explained the situation. As the base's media liaison, Davis knew this had the potential to become a news story. Chief, are you sure this is wise? What if the media shows up? Sir, we're not hiding anything. We're military personnel paying our respects to a veteran. If the media wants to cover that, they're welcome to. Davis made some quick notes. Keep it professional, Chief, and make sure everyone knows they're representing the Navy. Roger that, sir. The SEALs spent the next 20 minutes preparing with the same attention to detail they brought to combat missions. They checked each other's uniforms, made sure their ribbons were straight, and polished their shoes one more time. Petty Officer Danny Walsh had served with Frank Morrison in Kandahar Province. Frank had saved Danny's life when their convoy hit an IED. Danny still had scars on his back from the shrapnel, but he was alive because Frank had pulled him out of the burning vehicle. You know, Danny said to Ryan Carter while adjusting his tie, Master Chief Morrison never talks about his missions, never brags, never demands special treatment. The man has a Congressional Medal of Honor, and he keeps it in a box in his closet. Ryan nodded. He had only worked with Frank once, but it was enough to understand why these men revered him. Frank had taught Ryan how to survive behind enemy lines when everyone else had written him off. The old SEAL had spent 3 days without sleep, guiding Ryan through hostile territory until they reached safety. Petty Officer Pete Jackson was checking his sidearm, making sure it was properly secured. Pete owed Frank his career. After a mission in Syria went bad and Pete lost 2 teammates, he had wanted to quit the SEALs. Frank had talked him through the grief and guilt, helping Pete understand that the best way to honor his fallen brothers was to keep serving. "Ready, gentlemen?" Marcus asked. The 12 SEALs formed up in perfect formation. They looked like what they were: the most elite warriors in the American military. Their uniforms told the story of 2 decades of war. Their bearing spoke of discipline earned through the hardest training in the world. Their eyes held the calm confidence of men who had faced death and emerged victorious. They marched out of the briefing room in perfect step. Their boots made sharp sounds on the concrete floor. Sailors and Marines stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Word had spread through the base about what was happening, and everyone wanted to see the show. As they reached the parking area, 3 black SUVs waited for them. The vehicles were not official Navy transport, but personal vehicles belonging to team members. Each SUV could carry 4 men comfortably. Marcus climbed into the lead vehicle and checked the time. 15:45 hours. They would arrive at Pete's Gun Emporium exactly on schedule. "Gentlemen," he said into his radio, "this is Chief Cole. We are moving to target. Remember, we are representing the United States Navy and the SEAL community. Conduct yourselves accordingly." The 3 SUVs pulled out of the base parking lot and headed toward Harbor Boulevard. Inside each vehicle, the SEALs sat in silence, thinking about Frank Morrison and what he meant to them. They were about to remind some civilians that respect is not given freely. It is earned through service, sacrifice, and blood. And Master Chief, Frank Morrison had earned more respect than most people could imagine. The 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot of Pete's Gun Emporium at exactly 4 o'clock. The vehicles parked in a straight line, spaced perfectly apart. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the doors opened in perfect timing, like a choreographed dance. 12 Navy SEALs stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. Their dress blue uniforms were flawless. Gold buttons caught the light. Ribbons and medals told stories of courage under fire. White caps sat at precise angles on their heads. They moved with the fluid precision of men who had trained together for years. Commander Jake Sullivan took his position at the front of the formation. Behind him, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Cole stood like a mountain in uniform. The other 10 SEALs formed 2 perfect rows. They looked like a military honor guard, which in a way they were. People in the parking lot stopped and stared. A woman, getting out of her car, forgot to close her door. A man loading groceries into his truck set down his bags and watched. Everyone seemed to understand that something important was happening. The SEALs marched toward the gun shop entrance in perfect step. Their boots hit the pavement in unison, making a sound like distant thunder. Left, right, left, right. The rhythm was hypnotic and intimidating at the same time. Inside Pete's Gun Emporium, Danny Richards looked up from his phone when he heard the footsteps. Through the big front windows, he could see the formation of men in blue uniforms approaching. His face went pale. "Mr. Palmer?" Danny called out, his voice cracking. "You need to see this." Rick Palmer came out of his office carrying paperwork. He glanced toward the windows and froze. The papers fell from his hands and scattered on the floor. "What the hell?" Palmer whispered. The bell above the door chimed as Jake Sullivan pushed it open. He stepped inside and moved to the right. Marcus Cole followed and moved to the left. The other 10 SEALs filed through the door and took positions throughout the store. Within seconds, they had established a military presence that dominated the entire space. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Customers stepped back against the walls. The air itself seemed to change, becoming thick with the presence of professional warriors. These were not weekend soldiers or security guards. These were the elite of the elite, and everyone in the store could feel it. Jake removed his white cap and tucked it under his left arm. His uniform bore decorations that most people had only seen in movies. The Navy Cross hung from a blue and white ribbon. Bronze stars with Combat V devices lined his chest. A purple heart told the story of blood shed in service to his country. "Good afternoon," Jake announced. His voice carried easily through the silent store. "We are looking for the management of this establishment." Palmer stepped forward on shaking legs. His mouth was dry and his heart was pounding. "That's me, I'm the owner." Jake studied him for a moment. "Outstanding. We understand that earlier today you removed one of our teammates from your store." "Teammates?" Palmer's voice came out as a squeak. Marcus Cole stepped forward. At 6 feet 4 inches and 250 pounds, he cast a shadow over the entire counter area. His uniform displayed a silver star, 3 bronze stars, and a purple heart with 2 oak leaf clusters. The ribbons covered most of the left side of his chest. "Master Chief Frank Morrison," Marcus said, his voice deep and calm. "SEAL Team 6, Medal of Honor recipient, Navy Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with V device, and 4 oak leaf clusters. Purple Heart with 3 oak leaf clusters. The man who trained half the operators in this room." The silence in the store was complete. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped running. Danny Richards stood behind the counter, his face white as paper. He looked like he might faint. Lieutenant Ryan Carter spoke from his position near the rifle display. "Master Chief Morrison has more confirmed kills than everyone in this room combined. He has pulled wounded soldiers out of 12 different combat zones. He is the reason half of us are alive today." An elderly customer near the back of the store slowly removed his baseball cap. He was a Vietnam veteran himself and recognized what was happening. Other customers began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. Palmer looked around the shop, suddenly aware that every person was watching. Several customers were recording with their phones. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. "Please," Palmer said, his voice shaking. "There has been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" Marcus asked quietly. His voice was so calm it was terrifying. "Because what I understand is that a Medal of Honor recipient, a man who has bled for this country more times than you have probably donated blood, was treated like garbage in your store." Petty Officer Sam Torres stepped forward from the formation. His uniform showed 3 bronze stars and 2 purple hearts. "Master Chief Morrison spent 27 years in the most dangerous places on Earth. He never asked for special treatment. He never demanded recognition. He just wanted to buy ammunition for his service rifle." Danny Richards finally found his voice. "We didn't know. He looked like any other old guy." The words hung in the air like a confession. Jake looked at Danny with the cold stare of a man who had faced down terrorists and survived. "That is exactly the problem," Jake said. "You judged a Medal of Honor recipient by his clothes and his age. You decided his service meant nothing because he did not look the way you thought a hero should look." Petty Officer Danny Walsh spoke from his position near the door. "Master Chief Morrison saved my life in Afghanistan. He carried me 3 miles through enemy territory after I took shrapnel in both legs. He never left a man behind, not once, not ever." More customers were arriving, drawn by the crowd and the obvious drama. Word was spreading through the shopping center that something big was happening at the gun shop. People pressed against the windows trying to see inside. Palmer realized that his business reputation was being destroyed in real time. Every person in the store would tell this story. Every video being recorded would be shared online. The story of how Pete's Gun Emporium disrespected a war hero would spread across the internet. "What can we do?" Palmer asked desperately. "How can we make this right?" Marcus and Jake exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment when these civilians would learn about consequences. "You are going to personally deliver a written apology to Master Chief Morrison," Jake said. "You are going to offer him lifetime privileges at your store, and you are going to remember that the quiet old man in simple clothes might be the most dangerous person who ever walked through your door. More importantly," Marcus added, stepping closer to the counter, "you are going to remember that every veteran deserves respect. You do not get to decide whose service was valuable based on how they dress or how old they are." Ryan Carter moved to stand beside Marcus. Despite being the youngest SEAL in the group, his uniform bore 2 bronze stars and a purple heart. Master Chief Morrison taught me how to survive behind enemy lines. He spent 3 days without sleep, guiding me to safety when everyone else had written me off for dead. The customers in the store listened in stunned silence. They were witnessing something that none of them would ever forget. 12 of America's most elite warriors had come to defend the honor of one old man who had been treated badly. Jake put his cap back on and adjusted it to the proper angle. Master Chief Morrison will never mention this visit. He is too much of a gentleman. But if we ever hear of another veteran being disrespected in this establishment, we will be back. He paused and looked directly at Palmer and Richards. And next time we will not be nearly so polite. The 12 Navy SEALs stood in formation inside Pete's Gun Emporium for another long minute. Their presence filled the store like a physical force. Customers pressed against the walls, afraid to move. The only sounds were the buzz of fluorescent lights and the quiet breathing of very nervous people. Commander Jake Sullivan looked around the store one final time. His eyes met those of several customers who were recording everything on their phones. Good, he thought. Let the world see what happens when heroes are disrespected. Gentlemen, Jake said to his team, our mission here is complete. The SEALs began to move toward the exit in the same perfect formation they had used to enter. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Cole was the last to leave. He stopped at the counter and looked down at Rick Palmer and Danny Richards. Remember what we told you, Marcus said quietly. Every veteran who walks through that door has earned your respect. Every single one. Palmer nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. The SEALs filed out of the store in perfect order. The bell above the door chimed 12 times as they passed through. Outside, they reformed their ranks and marched back to their vehicles with the same precision they had shown arriving. As the 3 black SUVs drove away, the gun shop remained silent for several more minutes. Then, slowly, people began to talk, again. But the conversations were different now. Hushed, respectful. Everyone understood they had witnessed something important. Palmer looked at the scattered papers on the floor where he had dropped them. His hands were still shaking as he bent to pick them up. Danny Richards sat on his stool behind the counter, staring at nothing. Mr. Palmer, Danny said quietly, what are we going to do? Palmer looked at his young employee. The kid was 23 years old and thought he knew everything about the world. Today he had learned that there were things more important than his opinion. We are going to do exactly what they said, Palmer replied. We are going to write an apology letter, and then we are going to drive to that man's house and deliver it personally. The story of what happened at Pete's Gun Emporium spread through Harbor City like wildfire. By 6 o'clock that evening, videos of the SEALs entering and leaving the store were all over social media. The comment sections were filled with praise for the military men and criticism for the gun shop. Local news stations picked up the story. Channel 7 News led their evening broadcast with footage of 12 SEALs in dress uniform marching into a gun shop. The reporter explained that the visit was in response to the mistreatment of a decorated veteran. Meanwhile, Frank Morrison sat in his small kitchen, unaware of the storm his phone call had created. He was heating up a can of soup for dinner when his doorbell rang. Frank looked at the clock. 7:30. He was not expecting anyone. Frank opened his front door to find Rick Palmer and Danny Richards standing on his porch. Both men looked nervous and ashamed. Palmer held a white envelope in his hands. Master Chief Morrison? Palmer asked. Just Frank is fine, Frank replied. He studied the 2 men for a moment. You are from the gun shop? Yes, sir, Palmer said. We came to apologize for what happened today. We also brought you this. Palmer handed Frank the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter of apology and a lifetime membership card for the gun shop. The letter explained that they had not understood who Frank was or what his service meant. It promised that no veteran would ever be treated badly in their store again. Frank read the letter carefully, then looked up at the 2 men. This was not necessary, he said quietly. Yes, sir, it was, Danny said. His voice was different now, respectful. We were wrong. We were disrespectful to someone who deserved our thanks, not our rudeness. Frank stepped back and opened his door wider. Would you like to come in for coffee? Palmer and Danny looked surprised. After everything that had happened, this man was inviting them into his home. "That is very kind of you, sir," Palmer said. "But we do not want to take up your time." Frank smiled for the first time all day. "I have plenty of time, and I think we all learned something today." The three men sat in Frank's kitchen, drinking coffee and talking. Frank told them stories about his service, but not the dramatic ones they expected. He talked about the young men he had trained, the friendships he had made, and the honor of serving his country. Palmer and Danny listened with growing respect. They began to understand that Frank Morrison was not just a war hero from movies and books. He was a real person who had dedicated his life to protecting others. As they prepared to leave, Danny turned back to Frank. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you tell the difference between real veterans and people who are just pretending?" Frank thought for a moment. "Real veterans do not usually talk about being veterans," he said. "They do not demand special treatment. They just want to be treated like everyone else, with basic respect and kindness." After Palmer and Danny left, Frank sat on his front porch in the warm evening air. Across the street, he noticed a familiar pickup truck parked under a streetlight. A figure got out and walked toward his house. Jake Sullivan approached the porch and stopped at the bottom of the steps. He was still wearing his dress uniform, though he had loosened his tie. The young commander looked tired but satisfied. "Evening, Master Chief," Jake said. Frank stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. "Evening, Jake. I heard you boys caused quite a stir today." "Did we?" Jake asked innocently. "I do not recall anything unusual happening." Frank laughed. It was the first time he had really laughed in months. "You did not have to do that, son." "Yes, sir, we did," Jake replied seriously. "You never ask for anything. You never demand recognition. You just live quietly and expect nothing. But that does not mean you deserve nothing." The two men stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Frank looked at Jake's uniform, at the ribbons and medals that told the story of a warrior's life. "Thank you," Frank said simply. Jake nodded. "Thank you, sir, for everything you taught us, for everything you gave us, for showing us what it means to be a SEAL." As Jake walked back to his truck, Frank remained on his porch. The street was quiet now, lit by streetlights and the soft glow from house windows. Tomorrow would be another day. The gun shop would probably treat veterans better. The story would fade from social media. Life would go on. But tonight, Frank Morrison felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt honored, not because of what his former students had done for him, but because of what they had become. He had trained warriors, but more importantly, he had helped raise good men. Frank went inside his house and locked the door. On his kitchen table, the apology letter sat next to his coffee cup. He picked up the letter and read it one more time, then put it in a drawer with other important papers. Some battles are won with weapons and tactics. Others are won with honor and respect. Today, Frank Morrison had won both kinds of battles, and he had done it without firing a single shot.